Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Vibes. And I'd like to welcome here Roni Robbins, who is a writer and an author. So we're going to get to know her and about her book. So let's kick this off right. Roni, tell us a little bit more about you.
So I'm a 36, 37-year journalist. Been a while, a couple of decades of journalism, daily, weekly, specialty, healthcare, you name it. I've been around the block in journalism all this time, weathered the storms of journalism, and about 10 years ago, I guess, or so, I wrote a book, and, branched into a new area. And I have been marketing my book as a side gig to my journalism, which continues. I'm a freelancer today, so freelance journalist. After being downsized about a year ago, as journalists get downsized and newspapers aren't the end all be all anymore. Neither are like records, So times change, and I changed with it and weathered all those storms, and I'm still writing for a living in one way or another.
I read that you do something for WebMD.
So I was a editor up until a year ago. That was where I was downsized from Medscape WebMD. I operated out of my office was WebMD in Atlanta, but and they're based in Newark now. But they have a professional arm, which is covers doctors and the profession of medicine. And I wrote medical students, residents, PAs, and nurses. I covered those areas as an editor and also a writer. And about 6 months after I was downsized, I started freelancing for them. So I write about med students and residents still for them. And their sister publication of WebMD. I also freelance for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, my local newspaper. So keeping busy.
Your book, Hands of Gold. Now, this is loosely based on a true story.
Yes, it's based on my grandfather's life. He left another kind of recording, not records per se, but cassette tapes. He left cassette tapes. Do you remember those? And I listened to them. And at first, I just wrote a column for a newspaper that I was working for at the time. And then I decided that I would stay home from journalism, raise my children, because it was hard to do full-time journalism and also raise children. I'd stick them in daycare. I wouldn't have much quality time with them. I didn't think that was the right way to raise your children. After a certain point, I decided that that's not the right way to be a mom. So I stayed home. And I freelanced first, and it worked out pretty well for me because some of my articles got in some pretty big name Forbes, Huffington Post, New York Daily News. So it was a good decision after all. But and I wrote this book. So, but my grandfather left cassette tapes. I transcribed the cassette tapes, and I decided that there was more than just a column out of those cassette tapes. And I started investigating further and really pulling out some of the themes that I thought were important: love, perseverance, healthcare challenges, not letting things get in the way of providing a quality life for your family. There's a lot packed into this book about my grandfather's life, and he was involved in a workplace shooting. He was a clinical trial patient for streptomycin. TB is still in the news today. War, antisemitism, family life, immigrant life, things, topics that are still in our news today. So took me a long time to write it as I was freelancing and raising my kids, but I did it, and it finally got published.
And you write about the anti-Semitism across Europe in his travels. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Sure. So we're Jewish. He was in Europe, in Hungary, Czechoslovakia, um, and that area, and that all became Ukraine. Russia was fighting with them back then too, and trying to gain more land. So history repeats itself. But he made his way across countries and eventually got to Canada and then to America. So, but he escaped anti-Semitism. So he came here between World War I and World War II, but he lost all of his family in the Holocaust. Had he stayed there in Europe, he would have been one of them. So there's a lot of guilt that he has to deal with. Why wasn't that me? Why didn't I do more? Why didn't they listen to me? Why couldn't they come here with me and save themselves? So there's a lot of that in the book, and it does touch on the Holocaust, and because most of his family died there. My grandmother's also.
Mhm. You know,
Anti-Semitism still exists today. It's going on. There's a mini Holocaust going on in Israel, or that did go on about a month ago. I'm sorry, a year ago,
year ago. Yeah.
a year and a month ago. Apologies. Yeah, October 7th. So history repeats itself yet again.
Yeah, I keep Israel in my prayers every night, and especially for those that were kidnapped. I really would love to see them get home. But when he traveled, I'm assuming he had to have some help from other people. Did he get like hidden away, or how did that work out?
Well, he, like I said, he came here before World War II. So,
Yeah.
not exactly, but he turned to the Jewish community wherever he went during that time to just help him along his way. He got on a work ship and he jumped ship to be able to come to America, to be able to, yeah, come to America. So uh, it wasn't exactly like that because it wasn't yet World War II. He did have to avoid the draft that they were trying to draft him into the Czechoslovakian army at the time when he was fleeing. But he worked his way and was pretty determined to get to America, where some of his siblings already were established. So he just, like I said, he was lucky in that way, in that he made his decision to get out before World War II happened. But he called upon his own people along the way to help him to fulfill his goal and get him connected with the right folks to get to America.
Those gears started grinding during World War One, right?
Of course, he did face anti-Semitism. I mean, there was anti-Semitism in his village growing up, and there's always anti-Semitism. It never really goes away. It maybe have been in the background for a while, even in my own lifetime. Never really had to worry about it. But for him, it was always right there in the background. That and being found out for being escaping from serving in the military. So he was running, he was fleeing, he was running, he was afraid of he was more afraid of being conscripted, I think, than he was about being Jewish. So
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I didn't face anything like that, obviously, but being that I lost my brother and my father, they both ended their own lives, and several friends. I know what that survivor's guilt is like. Do you touch a lot on that, or is it kind of shortly mentioned?
There's a lot to dive into in my book, so I guess I didn't want to dwell on all of that too much.
Right.
But when you have 11 siblings and the majority of them are wiped out in the Holocaust. There was, I do touch on that. This is a story that some may consider Holocaust, but it really is. A story of immigrant life more than and cultural Jewish cultural life, I suppose, more than it is on the Holocaust. So yes, the Holocaust is a pivotal moment in the book, and there's some key scenes that tie in with the title of the book too. Uh, but I didn't want to dwell on that as it's the ups and downs of life. You go through things and then your life turns and it's positive for a while. And then just when things are going well, something happens. So you shouldn't, take everything for granted. And I think that's what this book, the underlying themes of the book are perseverance and just survival in one way or another. Now, he is not a Holocaust survivor, but in essence, he survived tuberculosis, which is the largest infectious disease in the world. People think it's COVID, but it's not. He survived that. He helped other people. So in that he survived, saved his own life by escaping, not his family's. He goes on to help other people as that clinical trial patient for streptomycin, which is still used today to treat TB. And also, he was involved in a workplace shooting spree having to do with those that were going through rehabilitation for TB. And there really was an article in the New York Daily News where I ended up freelancing for years later. But in 1958, there's an article about him talking to the gunman. And in my book, since my book is fiction, I take it a step further and say that he saved people in this workplace shooting spree, which isn't so far-fetched since he did have we call it chutzpah or gall, to talk to the gunman. So, yeah. And there were 200 people that were in that workplace shooting spree. So the facts are there. I just happened to play with them a little bit to make it more dramatic.
Is there a touch of a love story in there?
Yes, and that is the literal spark, because there literally are sparks in the book. Is the 60-year love story, 65-year love story between my grandparents, because you hear sickness and health and you hope never to have to go through this, the sickness part, but there was sickness in that she had to be the breadwinner at a time when women were not breadwinners and take care of the family while he was in and out of hospitals and rehabilitation for TB. So they literally, from the sparks of a sweater in the winter time, which is a little cliche, but hey, it happens. With sweaters in the wintertime, they showed the power of a romantic alliance that brought them through from the beginning to the end. And they died on the same exact day. This is truth. They died on the same exact day as each other, a year apart. So they literally died at the same age as each other, because my grandmother was a year older than my grandfather, and they did die a year apart. So that was the initial spark for me that, wow, that's romantic. I know it would be more romantic if they remained alive, but if I thought that was like the epitome of a strong relationship, to die on the same day as each other a year apart, which we call it the yahrzeit. It's a big thing, the year anniversary. Every year we say blessings, we say prayers for the person who died. So that first anniversary of a person's death is very significant, and that he couldn't make it past that day, or that day was so powerful for him that he couldn't stand to be apart from her. So he went and, met her in heaven, which is part of the book. So there is literally, that connection, that romance that's so strong to bind somebody together for all those years, and then to end up dying a year apart on that specific date seemed very symbolic and romantic to me. And that's where I started with the book.
Hard times make strong people, and it seems like we have had it so good for so long that we've made a generation of weak people. And
Definitely.
they went through so much, and then they stayed together. And you see this the smallest thing seems to break people up nowadays. This book should be an inspiration to people.
From your mouth to God's ears, or to readers' ears. Yes, there is a lot of tragedy in the book, but there's a lot of, as other Holocaust stories are, but there's a lot of determination, perseverance, and that survivor spirit. And marriage meant something to people. I think there wasn't an option out. Now, my husband likes to joke that murder, yes, but divorce, no. But I don't think that's the lingo you should use. Hey, you wanted some comedy. But this is real life stuff here. But I mean, we've been married 30 years. They were married 65. My parents are married. His parents and my parents married. My parents would have been 60. His parents, I don't fit more than 50, so I don't remember. But not everyone is as lucky or makes that kind of commitment that they'll try to kill each other. But but they're not. We're gonna stick it out through thick and thin. And I think that it's helpful that both of our parents had the same, and that we come from generations of folks that stayed married and just they put up with a lot more than we do. Yes, I would agree that we're raising kids to want the easy way out. I would hope that my kids know the struggle through me, because I didn't make it so easy on them. But a lot of people in their environment just had everything handed to them and just really don't know what it's like to challenge and go through hard times and stick with it.
I always said I wanted a marriage like my grandparents had. They went through a lot, and they stuck it out until they both passed away. You don't see that a whole lot nowadays, and it's sad.
Yeah.
Now, do you have a website?
Yes. My name, so you got to spell it right, but RoniRobbins.com. And all those W's and HTTPS and whatever at the beginning, but RoniRobbins.com. Yes. And, people can buy my book on Amazon. There's the QR code if my hair's not in the way. And, but they can find all that information online, more about my story, more about, the background of the book, and where I'm going to be having my next book talks, and all the media that's been written about the book. It's in the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. It's been written about in the Washington Jewish Week, in the Jerusalem Post. There's been a little bit of successful achievements from the book, and plus people seem to like it. So if it will just take off, maybe after your podcast, that would be great. Get more hands of gold in golden hands, is what I like to say.
If you'll send me that QR code, I can put that in the thumbnail, and then probably make it easier. But I will put all the links in the description to make it easy for everyone to buy the book.
Okay, great.
Roni, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this talk.
I did too. Thank you.
And also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. For my regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Till the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network